It's Gonna Hurt, but It Won't Kill You podcast where we talk about resilience, tenacity, and how we operate in the face of adversity. Everybody has a story. Today, we get the opportunity to sit with Mrs. Sara Lovestyle, who CEO, mother, podcast host, serial entrepreneur, venture capitalist. I'm sure there's a bunch of other titles we could talk about, but I just want to say thank you for joining me
Thank
today.
you for having me.
You just have done so much, and the research that I've done about you, one of the things that I think stands out is you don't talk about lifestyle. You talk about love style.
I do.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
So it was birthed from a place of frustration and anger. And so my son is nonverbal autistic, my oldest is. And I'm faith-based, so I'm going to talk about God a lot, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
And I remember having an issue with an IEP meeting with the county that I lived in and being so frustrated with the situation. And if you know me, I'm a thug. I am not a crier. I'm just not super emotional.
I love it.
And I remember coming home and just sobbing and be like, God, what do you want me to do with this? And I'm not saying why me. I'm not saying why him, because I know that he was made for me and I am meant to be his mother. But what do you want me to do in this situation? And I wasn't really on social media back then. I didn't have any of the businesses, and just so loud, God was like, he may not have a voice, but you do. And you are squandering it. And I won't lie, it hurt. I thought I would get a woe was me, my daughter, like a soft, gentle response. And that is not the one that I got.
Right.
And so the next day, well, that night, I started storyboarding and whiteboarding. Who am I exactly? And how do I show up in the world? And if I'm going to go to social media and I'm super private, I'm never going to show the kids. I'm never really going to talk a lot about my personal life. But if I'm going to start a business that is about me and finding my voice and in the process sharing my story, what does that look like? And every time I went back, love kept showing up. And so I choose to show up. My personal love styles to show up in love and compassion and kindness and acceptance and being okay, as a disruptor and being okay exactly with who I am and as I'm evolving and learning to show up authentically, which I hate that word since it's so overused, but showing up
It's trendy.
daily, authentically,
Yep.
in all of my glory, whether people like it or not.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Which part?
Showing up in all of your glory.
Ooh, how much time we got?
I felt like when you said that there was more to it, and I could see it in your expression that there was going to be a little bit more. So
my entire life was birthed from transformation, from resilience. My parents were from two different villages, and they left Ethiopia to go to Sudan. And so, my mom was 13, my dad was 16. My dad was told, listen, you need to take over, because my uncle had died in the war, and was told that he needed to replace my uncle. And my grandfather told him to run and don't come back until it's safe.
wow.
And so I think a lot about if that is the place that I'm birthed from, and then I'm born in a refugee camp. I come to the States by a miracle, by happenstance at 4. My story is wild. I ended up at a school that I shouldn't have been at, but it all worked out the way that it was supposed to. When I got to Mizzou, and I had a heart attack at 23, 6 days after my son was born, and then he's diagnosed a few years after that, and it breaks you if you allow it. And so I had to make a decision of, I have every right to be angry, and I have every right to be frustrated. I have every right to be cruel if I chose, but that's not the life that I chose for myself, and that's not how I wanted to show up. And so, showing up in all my glory is even when things hurt, and vulnerability is not my strong suit. I won't even lie.
I hear you.
It is not something that I enjoy or like, but it's a necessity. But out of that story and out of everything that I've been through is where the story of who I am, it's what cultivates who I'm supposed to be and how I show up every day. Sometimes it's too much for people, and sometimes they love it. You got to find your people.
Of course. So, in diving into that vulnerability piece, what exactly does that mean for you?
Ooh. We're going there. The most painful parts of my life have made me. My son being nonverbal autistic, I didn't talk about it for a long time because I said I was not going to cry. Because you want to shield the parts of you that hurt.
Right.
And I want to shield the one person that cannot defend themselves. And I know me, I will take you out over my kids. It's one of the reasons why I don't show them.
Yeah.
And to the parents that do, like, kudos, because I don't know how y'all do it, but I couldn't. And that part of me and that part of my story with Josiah in particular felt so raw that I felt like I couldn't be vulnerable.
Yeah.
But I will say that when I started talking about him and talking about my story, in the process, I was also able to heal. It needed to be real, and I found other parents, I found other folks who had been through, even if they didn't have children with special needs, but they had stories to tell that for them felt raw and they needed to shield or shelter. Sometimes we just need the permission to know that it's okay.
Right.
But in that process, I definitely healed by sharing me, even though I didn't like it at the time.
So, as you can see in this book, I wrote about transparency and vulnerability because I literally feel like that saved my life. In saying that, I feel like the question I want to ask you is, how do you think that impacted the people around you, the fact that you allowed yourself to be vulnerable?
Ooh. It was 5 years before I started talking about Josiah. I lived in a city where my now ex-husband and we both did really well in our 20s, and we did not talk because we were trying to cope with it ourselves and just trying to navigate, healing and doctors and therapists, and but I should have found at least tried to find my tribe, because by not sharing it, it was such a lonely journey. And it was scary and it was dark, and it's easy to get caught up in this rabbit hole. I talk often with my girlfriends about, the scripture where it says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And for me, I was struggling to walk through.
Right.
And to be honest, there were moments where I built a house in that valley that I had no reason to build it there. But it's almost, you're so busy trying to fix and cope and live and just trying to get through the day to day that I didn't even know how to find my people or to be vulnerable. And who do you trust? And who do you tell the most painful part of your life to? But once I got through it, I found my people. I found my tribe. I found my girlfriends who were there for me. And when I couldn't stand, they either they got down on their knees with me and they prayed with me. Or, being able to stand and even find my confidence as a woman, because there were moments where I felt like I was failing.
Yeah.
Like, am I failing my son? Did I fail him pregnant? Was there something I could have done? But these aren't conversations that I was having for, God, at least 5 years. But once I did, it was freeing.
So there's an obvious level of resilience through just the history of your story. One of the things I saw that was consistent when your family first came to America and then when you were in the hospital with your son was your smile. And obviously you could see your smile here today, so you can see how that could have an impact just on your life in general. Are there moments when you didn't feel that you deserve to smile? And I know that's a loaded question, so take your time answering that.
I don't know if there was a time I felt like I didn't deserve to smile, but there were moments where I struggled choosing to smile. And here's something really wild about me that I don't think I've ever talked about publicly. I showed up on the internet every day for work while I was going through the most tumultuous, awful divorce. And it took me 3 years to get divorced. It was awful. But I smiled every single day, even when I didn't feel like it and when I didn't want to. And it's not to say that that I thought I even deserved it at some moments, but I had to choose my joy.
Yeah.
And then in full transparency, I will say the one time where I felt like I should not and could not and did not deserve to was after my best friend passed last year. And when Kayla died, I struggled for a solid 4 months where I felt like I shouldn't be able to smile. I shouldn't be able to laugh. I shouldn't be able to enjoy life because she's not here. And the wild thing about grief, whether someone's living or not, is time keeps moving.
Yeah.
And the world keeps going.
Absolutely.
And you're not okay. And you're at this place where it is so dark that you feel like you don't deserve to, like survival skill. We talked about that all the time. It is such a painful place to be where you think you don't deserve to live. And it took months and therapy for me to get to that point.
Yeah. So, just like you mentioned, we sort of talked a little bit about survivor's guilt, and also just about death and what impact that has on you and your life. So my condolences to you on losing your friend. Part of like my story, for example, was I felt like that when I lost my younger brothers. I asked a question because I didn't feel like I deserved to smile, because there were so many moments I had when I'm just like, if you would have done this, it would have made a difference. Did you have any of those moments?
Oh, yeah. Conversations I should have had.
Yeah.
Moments I should have stopped, where I was so busy building Sara Lovestyle, my companies, that I did not stop to check on folks. And moments when I, words I could have said, were there things that I could have done? Could I have stopped? But we get so caught up, at least for me, I was so caught up in what I was dealing with. And because I wasn't talking to anybody about the situation with my divorce, I wasn't talking about what was going on with Josiah. I wasn't talking about, I also have a younger son. The boys are only 17 months apart. And so because I didn't talk about it, I was just so caught up in my own world that I honestly felt like I had failed her as a friend. I felt like I had failed my sisters by not being the sister that I should have been. Sometimes feeling like I failed as a daughter because I wasn't doing the things that I should have, could have been doing. There could have been more. But it's the unfortunate part about life is loss and grief. And when situations happen, you're forced to kind of reevaluate and really become, and hopefully choose to become self-aware and to do the inner work. Because if you don't, it can be detrimental.
Yeah. Obviously, faith for you is a huge thing.
It is.
What are some of the things you do, whether it's connected to your faith or just in life in general, that allow you to navigate the world day by day?
I won't lie, and we were talking about this before we started. It is prayer, it's meditation. That is my daily practice. And it's not from a place of like, because it's cute. It's hard. Like, it is hard to sit still with your thoughts for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, for 15 minutes. One, because we're distracted about what I could be doing, should be doing. And I'm one of those people where I feel like time and efficiency is everything. And so because I'm consistently moving, it's hard to stop my brain. But also I thought it was, oh, I'm just busy, or my brain just doesn't stop. No, it's scary.
Yeah.
Because you can't lie to yourself when you're sitting still for 5 minutes. You can't lie to yourself for 15 minutes. It gets dark and you're forced to be with your thoughts, and they're not always good. My entire life is built, and my brain is built on positivity and love and kindness. But am I giving those things to myself?
Right.
And the truth is no. It's not a good feeling, but I have to every single day. And prayer for me it's daily gratitude. And I know we talk about as a society sometimes not like, look forward and where you're going and don't look back. But the reality is I have to sometimes look back because I am so ambitious and I'm so caught up in what I need to do tomorrow that I forget how far I've come.
Oh, yeah.
I forget. I need to look back for a second to remember the place I was 3 years ago. I won't even lie. I had it happen to me this week, and this is really embarrassing, but I'm going to tell it anyway. I remember this week waking up in my house and having coffee and being like, Lord, I really want this next in my life and I want this accomplishment next. And God was like, sis, I just gave you your dream house 4 months ago post-divorce as a single mom in California. Are you crazy?
Mm.
And I was like, you know what, Lord, I got you. Okay. I need to sit still.
Yeah.
And so it's a reminder of, hey, you survived divorce. You survived so many things up until this point of your life. You've survived a heart attack. Okay, let me be still and be grateful for what I have right now. The other thing that I do daily is I listen to a sermon every single day, because the world is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And the only way for me to be able to put up with some of these children of God is to listen to a sermon, because I can't sometimes. I just can't.
So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, you are CEO, mom, venture capitalist. I read about you have the Houston Hyenas in the metaverse as well.
I do.
I think that's pretty dope. I was talking about crypto recently, but in doing all of that, where do you find balance?
Ooh. One, balance is not real.
I thought you'd say that.
So I don't.
You integrate.
I do.
Yep.
Every part of my life is integrated together. I also think, because I don't show my children, and it's completely fair, is that there's this assumption that they're two very different halves of my life, and they're not. 90% of the time, my children are with me.
Yeah.
Well, 100% of the time, they're with me. If I'm traveling, they're with me. If you've ever been on a Zoom call with me, like still to this day, I do not apologize for my children popping in my Zooms. Or sometimes Josiah will be sitting next to me, or they'll stop by and say hello. The kids are a part of everything that I do. But also, I'm really regimented and scheduled. So like one day is just for the Houston Hyenas, which is like Mondays, and one day is only for the VC world, and one day is only for my personal board and my like angel investments. And then I only shoot content once a week. I shoot 5 hours and then I'm done. So I definitely integrate the two parts of my life. But I've also learned to forgive myself when I am the best CEO and not a very good mom, at least for me. And then the days where I'm a really damn good mom, I may not necessarily be the best CEO, and that's okay. I have to be okay with that.
And what you just said, literally, you talked about being unapologetic. Tell me about what that means for you with all that you have on your plate.
What's interesting is it took a lot of therapy and counseling to get to that point, and also growth and evolution, because I am at the point now where I am so careful with my energy and who I give it to, and the time that I spend and who I give it to. I'm very careful about the business ventures that I get into. I'm very careful about anything that takes me away from my children. Is it worth it? And if it's not, then I don't do it. And tell me the question again.
So you talked about being unapologetic.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to you with all that you have to do, all that you have on your plate?
It's not to say that there isn't grace, because God's grace is sufficient enough. It's not to say that I do it all, because I don't.
Yeah.
It's not to say that I do everything well, and definitely not well all at once. It has taken so much inner work to become unapologetic to the point where I truly, genuinely do not care what other people think.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the most respectful way.
Absolutely.
And obviously I have my friends who can check me. There are, you have your confidants, and you have your circle, and you have, your friends that you do have conversations with. But who I show up in the world is me. If you love it, great. And if you don't, that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't love everybody. I don't like everybody. I have this conversation with my son at least twice a week. He's 10, or he's 11 now, but he's in 5th grade, and he thinks like the world is over and the world is ending. No, you show up every single day.
Yep.
Exactly who you are. If they like it, great. And if they don't, F them. Like, that is literally how I show up.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit more about your inner work. I know we dove into that a little bit, but tell me about whether it's daily or if you have a regimen that allows you to show up as Sara Lovestyle every single day that you think would possibly be a difference maker for other people as well.
It's kind of like what we talked about earlier. It's gratitude, it's prayer, it's self-control.
Yeah.
About what I do and what I say. It's being disciplined. It's pivoting quickly. It's failing and failing quickly. The reality is life is going to happen to you whether you like it or not.
Absolutely.
The question is, what are you going to do with it once it happens to you? And the way that I think about it, or the question that I ask anytime something happens, is God, universe, whatever you believe in, either what are you shielding me from and what are you protecting me from? Or what am I not seeing that I need to see?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's being able to have that self-awareness, to self-reflect, but also becoming aware of everything that's happening around you. And if you're not and you can't figure it out, then you sit the hell still.
Mm.
But we always feel like we need to be moving and we need to fix and we need to have a solution. And sometimes the solution is sit the hell down. Sit your butt down.
Right.
And reflect and think and write. I journal every single day because, my brain moves so fast that if I don't write it down, I will forget.
Got to be on the calendar.
I have to. I work out every day.
Yeah.
That is a must, at least 5 days a week. And it's not from an aesthetic standpoint. It's truly for my own mental health.
Yeah. And to that end, I'm glad you brought that up, because you mentioned earlier that you had the heart attack at 23, and in reading some of your story, you talked about what building that workout regimen allows you to do. Can you dive a little bit more into that piece of it?
What's interesting is for me personally, one, I learned to love it, and I learned to power lift, and the fact that I really enjoy putting my body through it and seeing what it can do. But what it did was create consistency and discipline within my workout regimen. And I will say, I have, not to say that I'm perfect at it, because I gained a solid 25 pounds during the pandemic. But also that same regimen and discipline and self-control I was able to put into my business.
Yeah.
That apply. A lot of the best CEOs all have a workout regimen.
Right.
Some folks get up at 5 a.m. I'm not that person because I've got kids and they got to go to school. But it's it's the discipline, it's the self-control, it's the self-awareness, it's that mind-body connection that forces you to be focused that I apply to different areas of my life.
So you just mentioned like other CEOs, and just naturally the question I think goes here would be, in thinking about that, are there particular patterns that you think are important in navigating that part of your world?
What do you mean?
As far as like the work that you do every day and incorporating like your workout regimen, for example, are there any other areas that you think, as a CEO or just generally speaking, as a human who wants to advance themselves, are there any particular things that you would say, hey, if I could suggest you to do anything, this is where I'd start?
One, I think we give up on ourselves so fast that we don't even give ourselves the opportunity to fail.
Yeah.
And so, I've heard even some of my girlfriends who won't step foot in the gym because they're like, I don't know what to do.
Right.
There are trainers in there. Ask for help. But as someone who doesn't ask for help in real life, I learned the hard way that doesn't work there either.
Right.
As a CEO, being able to build a team and being able to ask someone who is proficient in their skill sets and in their area of expertise, it's not having an ego or putting my pride aside and asking for help. There are so many elements of like life and fitness that, or even in parenting, like kids tell you the truth with no filter.
Yeah.
And nobody's gonna hurt your feelings like children will. So it makes you not soft. It makes you not really, or even with social media, people are like, how do you deal with haters or people who see mean things to you? First of all, I'm African. There's really not a whole lot you can say to me that I haven't already heard. And then the other thing is I have kids. Like, have you heard them? They are brutal. But it makes you not sensitive in business either, because there's really not a whole lot that they can say about you. There are so many life and even spiritual correlations where internally, by doing the work, I'm so confident in what I do and how I do it that you really can't tell me nothing.
Yeah.
But I'm also a consistent student. So there is the space to learn consistently, but also being really confident in who I am every single day and knowing what I do and what I do best. Like, I'm not going to go to your world and be like, let me tell you what to do.
Right.
No, I need to get somewhere, sit down and learn. But it's, there's a lot of elements where you can kind of cross promote or cross them to gain more skill sets.
Yeah. Failure came up a couple of times in saying that, even in answering the last question for you. So talk to me about what it means to allow yourself to fail so you can move forward?
So here's what's wild. My dad, God bless him, since I was a kid, I am a perfectionist. I am a Capricorn, if you believe in that thing. I am an overachiever. I operate at a very high level. And I've known this since I was a kid. Like when I was 13, I knew in 7th grade the college that I would go to, and I did get into it. I didn't end up attending because I didn't get enough scholarship money, but that's beside the point.
Fair enough.
I got into the school of my choice, and I knew that I wanted to be a sports reporter. And what's interesting is I thought that dream had died, so I let it go. Only for 15 years later, I work in sports and entertainment now. So
Right.
it all came back full circle. But my dad used to ask me, what did you fail at today? And I do the same practice with my children now. And I'd be like, nothing. Like I was great today.
Yeah.
I was an excellent student. I had a 4.0, like I did great. And my dad would almost be disappointed. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? And he would say, that means you didn't give yourself the opportunity to fail. So you didn't try something new. And as adults, and as we get older, we do that even more, where we will stay in our lane or what we think we're the most comfortable and where we are content. And we don't give ourselves the chance to fail. I see it a lot, especially on social media, where I can see somebody who's really, really good and they probably should be a writer, but they won't write the book because they're afraid. Or they won't become a speaker because they're like, why would anybody care about what I have to say? And I am saying this as someone who, that was me. I wouldn't get on social media because who is going to care about what I have to say? Why the heck would I start a podcast? What do I got to talk about? I don't have a particular skill set that, that I'm technically, I don't have the degree for it. I don't technically qualify. And so why would anyone listen? But the reality is there are, and it matters. And I have a political science degree and I have a podcast. I do not have a financial background and I'm in the investment world. I do not have a tech background. And I'm in a tech VC and I have 17 companies that I sit on the boards of. From a place of being an influencer, what the heck value could I bring to them? Right. But the reality is none of that mattered. I had to give myself the chance to fail. And knock on wood, I have not failed yet. But it's giving yourself a shot. And if you do fail, my dad would say, who cares?
Yeah.
What did you learn?
Yeah.
And he told me, fail fast. Make a decision and pivot now. I think sometimes we fail and we just sit. Or we're like, okay, well, it didn't work this one time, so I'm just not going to do it again. Or we fail too soon. We fail and then we give up too soon right before you're on the brink of a breakthrough. And so it's just like, keep going. Just keep going. You don't know what's on the other side.
Do you have any specific moments that come to mind following what you just said where you're just like, oh man, if I just keep on pushing through, then I could see the light on the other side?
Social media. I am shy, quiet, and introverted. God got jokes because there's no way I should be doing what I do now.
Yeah.
I almost gave up on social media. After my divorce, I was like, do I go back to corporate America and do what I think I do because it's safe? But I knew that I would be unhappy, so I didn't. I remember I had a business, actually a coaching business, and I was doing really, really well. And I hated it. I was miserable. And so I stopped. And I remember being like, God, did I fail? And he was like, no. But turns out doing that, though, honed in other skill sets that I needed. It honed my people skills. It kind of helped me to break out of that shyness and become more open to talking to new people. And it taught me how to be outside in a way that I wouldn't have because I don't really like people that much. So failure is inevitable. It's going to happen. Even in pivoting with my first investment, it was a bomb. I think it was like a $15,000 fail. And I could have never done it again, but I was obsessed with it. And once I became obsessed and once I noticed what my purpose and my calling was, and I could see where I was going, like 10 steps, 20 steps, 100 steps ahead, now there's no way I could quit. There's no way.
Got it. So you seem like the kind of person who has their lives very structured.
I am.
I can even hear it in the delivery of what you say. I love it. So with failure in mind and the way that I sort of process things, I think about what we can do to consistently challenge ourselves in order to become better. What area of your life is presenting itself as a challenge for you right now?
Oof, that's a good question. I think there's several. There's patience, because I want to move fast.
Yeah.
And I want to go faster, and I want to run at the speed of light. And what happens when I do that is I miss opportunities of growth. I make mistakes. Sometimes I will miss people that should have been involved because I'm moving so fast that I kind of miss the people that should have been added to my life or to my business. Patience forces you to slow down to see mistakes that should not have been made. And the other thing I will say too is like pride and ego, right? Like when you're really good at what you do
Oh, yeah.
and you're used to working alone, bruh,
You preaching to the choir right now.
to set it aside and to admit I don't know.
Yeah.
And for someone like me who struggles to ask for help, oh yeah, no. Like the way that God humbled me forced me to learn how to submit to a process when I don't like it. And the thought of submission to the purpose is hurtful, it's painful, it makes you very aware of the parts of you that aren't necessarily a bad thing, because you do need to have that confidence and you do need to have a level of self about you. But to become aware that you don't know everything, or that there are things missing, or that if you allow your pride to get in the way, you truly miss out on the opportunities. Because sometimes the difference between $1 million deal and a $10 million deal and a 50 or 100 or $200 million deal, and I've seen this with other CEOs. When I know there's one company, they IPO'd, and someone else's ego almost made me miss the boat for that IPO. But then I missed an opportunity with another company because of my ego. And I still have not let that go.